Welcome to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast from WealthManagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. I'm Diana Britton, managing editor of WealthManagement.com, and in this podcast we explore some of the struggles and personal development issues facing advisors and financial services professionals, and how to get to a place of healing for mind, body, and spirit. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Healthy Advisor podcast, and thanks for joining us. As you may know, this is the podcast focused on financial advisor health and well-being, and today's guest is going to share her journey down that road. Her name is Mary Saylor. She's a senior director of wealth management at Choreo. Mary, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Diana.
Yeah, so Mary may not think about her experience as a huge struggle or, consider that what she faced was adversity. She's a pretty humble person, as you'll find out, but it was difficult. And I think it's worth highlighting here. A lot of folks are going through this, have gone through this, but just months before graduating from Penn State University with a degree in accounting, she gave birth to her daughter, Molly. She was on the job not long after working in corporate accounting roles, earning her CPA and CFP. Very, very difficult exams, very difficult designations to get, but worked her way up the corporate ladder as a single mother in her early 20s. So, Mary, I guess take us back to that time in your life. You're in college. How did you find out that you were first pregnant?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take a step back and start with how I even got to that point, right? So, started at Penn State main campus, and I met my daughter's dad when we were freshmen, actually, but we didn't start dating till sophomore year. So, he actually was at a satellite campus, so most of our 3-year relationship was actually long distance because I was at main campus up in State College, Pennsylvania, and he was at a satellite campus sophomore year, and then he actually moved to Hawaii our junior year.
Mm.
So I went out to Hawaii twice our junior year and visited, and we did the long distance thing until senior year. So actually, right before senior year was when I found out that I was pregnant. So it was, I believe it was August, right before the first semester of senior year started. And I had actually spent some time doing summer classes up there. I did summer session at Penn State before my freshman year. So I tried to stack all of my accounting major and Spanish minor classes prior to my senior year because I really wanted to have that sort of carefree and fun senior year with just like my general education requirements and sort of those easier classes for my senior year.
Yeah,
So that,
smart.
right. So that worked out to my advantage because I found out I was pregnant right before that fall semester started. So it was a little bit of a scramble with trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to graduate? How am I going to make sure that my degree is from main campus? And luckily, I had saved those gen eds because I guess it's a career advisor or student advisor at Penn State was able to work with me and get all the classes I needed stacked into that first semester so I could actually finish the second semester of my senior year through the Penn State World Campus program. So I tell people like Penn State's a huge campus, right? Like some people are scared of that just large student population and you feel like you're not going to get the one-on-one attention you might be used to from high school or you think you might need. But I will say they were amazing at helping me just navigate, okay, here's the situation. I need to make sure that I graduate and I want to do it on time and I want to graduate from main campus and the Smeal College of Business. So how do we do that? And they were a huge help in making sure that that happened.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, how did you feel when you first found out? I'm just wondering, like, what kind of emotional stuff were you dealing with at that time?
So I would say the first the first emotion was probably shock, right? We
Yeah.
didn't even actually believe it. Like I had taken a pregnancy test and it was positive, but I still was like, that can't be right, right? So let's go to a doctor. And they confirmed it, right? So once the initial shock wore off, that's when I started to, we had to get our ducks in a row with, okay, I need to first tell my parents. And they were incredibly supportive. But the first thing my mom did say was, "You're finishing college, right? You're finishing
Mm,
school." So that was goal number one, was just making sure that I got that degree and that I would be able to support myself and my soon-to-be daughter. And I think that was huge. Was just probably could have been just as easy to quit there and say, I'll finish this later. And I think a lot of
yeah.
people don't, but powered through and got it done with the help of a lot of people. And then she was born in April, and then I graduated up at main campus with the rest of my class in May. So she was a month old and attended her mom's graduation from college, which is pretty cool. We have this framed picture actually of her in front of if anybody's familiar with Penn State and sort of the Nittany Lion Shrine, as people call it. We have a picture of me in my graduation outfit, and she's in the little baby carrier with me there. So not something everybody has, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean now I know it's sort of come full circle, right? And she's actually a freshman at Penn State now.
That's right. So it has come full circle, which is also really cool. It's kind of she's back where it all started. So
Was she like, I'm always gonna go to Penn State like my mom, or
a little bit, I think, like people joke that Penn State's like this cult, right? It's got the football mentality and it has a huge alumni support system. So I'm actually thrilled that that was her number one choice. And it was stressful last year when we were waiting for, all the college responses, and she didn't want to go anywhere else. This was her number one choice. So we were thrilled, and her dad's thrilled, and my brother went to Penn State, so we've got a lot of Penn Staters in the family. So it's pretty cool to get to have that experience together now and get to do all things Penn State together.
yeah, yeah, I bet that's a awesome shared experience that you have with her. What, I mean, I guess coming back to, being pregnant on campus, what was that like? Did you try to hide it? I don't know.
So a little bit at first, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it's a secret that Penn State's one of the top 10 party schools out there, and so Uh, while there's tons of other things that you can do up there, that's the initial, like, it was pretty obvious. I had to tell all of my friends and everybody in my social circle because I think it was pretty obvious when I wasn't going out with them anymore and hanging out socially like that. So,
Mm,
um, I focused on school and I was having to drive back and forth from doctor's appointments. And I did, once it got cold up there, which happens pretty quickly in State College, being in the mountains, I just started wearing sweatshirts and I really did kind of hide it for a while. Obviously, it's not common. And I did feel, I guess, I don't know if what the right word is to describe it, but I just wanted to fit in. You're in college and I had this like grand idea of what my senior year was going to be like. And obviously, it didn't turn out quite that way. And that's how life goes sometimes. So it's good to have a plan, but it's always good to be able to pivot when that plan doesn't go exactly according to the way you thought.
yeah. How did you feel, I guess, during that time, about becoming a mom? Friends are all kind of on campus partying. You're faced with this huge life change. I guess I'm wondering how you kind of navigated that.
Yeah, so I had always, I mean, if people who know me, my friends, my family, they know I love babies. I grew up around babies. I come from a huge Irish Catholic family, so
Mm,
I grew up babysitting and just taking care of babies my whole life. So I always wanted to be a mom. That was something that was always on my mind. I knew eventually I would do it. I just didn't know it was going to happen when I was 21. So I was thrilled, honestly. Babies are exciting. I think they're just such a blessing. And so once you get past that initial shock of like, okay, this wasn't planned, but I was excited. And a lot of people in my support system and my family and some of my friends, they were supportive too. And I think it made it exciting, right? you went from that initial shock, like to, okay, we're having a new baby and it is a blessing and we're going to celebrate that. So it was definitely a change from the lifestyle that we had been living previously, but one that I feel like we pivoted pretty quickly.
Mm. Yeah, I
And
mean,
you
I
kind
think
of
that's
have to,
key,
right?
right?
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have to. That's just part of being a parent. That's being a mom or a dad. And while I think like a lot of the brunt falls on the mom initially, just carrying a baby and going through the physical changes and the emotional changes quicker than fathers, I think that's just part of parenthood in general is it's a shift in lifestyle for anybody at any age. So
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the father, how did he react, to the news? And I know you mentioned you kind of went through a little bit of a custody battle with him and his family.
yeah, I mean, obviously both of us were in the same boat together, so there was that initial shock period, and then being supportive of each other, and soon after, obviously my life changed very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm pregnant. He actually had to stay in school a little bit longer, so I kind of had to dive right into motherhood as soon as she was born. So I think it was just a quicker sort of transition for me to parenthood, and we soon after broke up after she was born. Just, I think I had to grow up very quickly.
Mm,
And so we didn't stay together after she was born. And I think initially, just because we were young, we leaned on our families a lot, right? So it became, I kind of joke, like an ego battle a little bit with just like silly things that we would fight about and then have to go to court over. And looking back on it, it's just crazy because you spend all that money with lawyers and mediation and court, and we could have paid for her entire Penn State education had
mm.
uh had we thought about that at that time instead of going through, just lawyers and that sort of thing. So luckily we were able to get past that, and she was young, so she doesn't remember any of it. So I think that's also a little bit of a blessing that we were able to kind of go through that, grow from it. Now we're all good friends and we're able to co-parent together pretty well. So
After, I mean, so I know after graduating, you pretty much went straight into the workforce. You went into the audit department at RSM, one of the largest accounting firms in the world. And starting, I think, starting a new job is difficult enough as it is, but you were doing it as a single mom with a newborn. How did you navigate that? What were some of the challenges that came up?
yeah, so initially, so she was born in April. I didn't start working at RSM till September. So I started with like the new class of college recruits that year. And so she was a few months old. I was really fortunate that I had a very large support system within my family that was able to help. So we didn't do daycare. I was able to work with my family, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my aunts. Like I said, I came from a big Irish Catholic family. So we all support each other as much as possible. And they were a huge part of just making it easy for me to go back to work or to start work. I think the some of the harder parts were I was a breastfeeding mom,
Mm,
and nowadays that's pretty common. You think like, okay, this is 2006 we're talking about, but it doesn't feel like that long ago, but there weren't like privacy rooms, right? There was no mom rooms or whatever they call them nowadays that you see in office settings. So that was one of the biggest challenges I would say was just trying to navigate like, okay, I have to carry around this very large breast pump. They didn't make them like compact and kind of cute packaging back then. So
yeah.
I'm carrying around this like giant briefcase, which was my breast pump, and figuring out like, okay, where am I going to do this? And we actually had an HR person who at the time at RSM turned like the audit library into sort of my privacy room, and she would put a sign on the door and we would put a chair up against the door on the inside because the doors didn't lock. So it
Oh
was it was
gosh.
interesting, just like always trying to be creative about how we were gonna do that. And it was even harder when, if you know anything about the audit world, you're traveling a lot, right? Because you're going from client to client. So sometimes the location might change one week to the next. So navigating like, okay, am I going to go to my car today? Am I going to go to the public restroom or trying to
Mm.
figure out, those kinds of things. So definitely a little different start to my career than a lot of the like recent college grads that I started with, but they were a great support system for me too. No one judged. People were really supportive that I worked with. My colleagues, I'm still very close with today. Some of whom are clients, some of whom support me through referrals. So I created a really, large support system in the workplace that I think really helped navigate those kind of early months. And then just managing the schedule, right? Like with traveling a lot, a few months in, I quickly realized how difficult it was going to be, like not knowing where I am week to week and not knowing where I'm going to have to be the following week and how much travel time is going to be involved. And that led me to requesting a reduced work schedule, which again, at the time, didn't necessarily exist to the point they do today in the workplace, where they're pretty, there's different work-life balance schedules that you can request, and a lot of companies offer. That wasn't necessarily something that was advertised, but they were really supportive, and I ended up going to a part-time schedule so that I could feel like I was managing being a mom and working at the same time. So that was huge. Obviously, I think it would have been really stressful without having that part-time schedule. And especially it allowed me to start studying for my CPA, which took a good 18 months. So
Yeah. So I know just for our listeners' sake, Mary, eventually moved over to RSM's Wealth Management division, and just a few years ago, that division spun out of RSM, and it's was rebranded Choreo, which is where she is today. But just a little bit about, single parents in the workforce. There are nearly 15 million single moms in the US. The US has the largest rate of single parent households, and 78% of single moms are employed in some way. Two-thirds of these women are working outside the home. But I actually I wrote an article in 2019, kind of asking the question, will having kids kill your advisory career? And I was looking at, being a mom, being a parent in this industry in general, not just being a single parent. But overwhelmingly the answer was no. But a lot of young moms, said that having a supportive partner, being part of team-based practices, and having those flexible work schedules were key to being successful here. And just here's an excerpt from that article. At either small independent shops or larger firms, starting a family can seem incompatible with building a practice for many women, perhaps more so than in other industries. The need to bring in new business, client expectations, unstructured or ad hoc family leave policies, and the fact that most licenses expire after 2 years make it a difficult balancing act, and many take a very real revenue hit. And I mean, I don't want to just talk about women here. I mean, I think this affects, men and women, who want to start families in this industry. But I mean, just what were some of the challenges that you faced, Mary, during those early years in your career?
yeah, that's I didn't know those stats, so thank you for sharing those, Diana. I didn't realize the staggering
You're not
numbers of
alone.
of
Yeah.
single parents and
You're definitely not alone.
yeah, that's good to know. So I would say the audit profession itself, at least the stage that I was in, was difficult just because of the travel involved and not being able to plan your schedule ahead of time too much. So when I found out that there was a wealth management division within the accounting firm and I found out what they did, I was immediately drawn to it because it was everything that I was looking for from the standpoint of, okay, it's more manageable from a schedule standpoint because you're in the office for the most part, right? You're attending client meetings and there's some travel involved, but for the most part, you're going to the office every day. So you know your location. You're not changing locations week to week or every couple of weeks like you might be in the audit profession. But the part that I loved about the audit profession was working with people, right? Whether it was the different teams I would work with or the different clients that I worked with, it was the people that I was drawn to.
Mm.
And in wealth management, it's a people business, right? You're working with families, you're working with people. And once I started to learn about wealth management and what exactly wealth advisors do and what the RSM wealth management group did, I knew I immediately wanted to essentially start my career over, right? Because it's a different career than, working up the corporate ladder of audit or the tax world of an accounting firm. So I
Hmm.
I was really drawn to that, and I think it was a little bit of the schedule piece, but more so just working with people and being able to work with families and really become a part of their families and helping them with their goals and their values and being a part of their families' journeys, whether it's being a business owner or helping their kids get to college and how to pay for it and all of those things. So I think the the shift while it was basically starting a new career, I didn't really know a whole lot about wealth management. It was it was a good one and one that I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to take.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of folks talk about this career as, being great for flexibility and balance. I guess I'm wondering, what kind of motivated you to keep going, to be successful? I think a lot of us parents, single parents or not, struggle with prioritizing time spent with our kids versus the work schedules. It's like the juggle is real, right? And
Oh yeah.
I mean, I have that as well. Even I have a partner, but which makes things easier. But how did you keep going? How did you get through all of those challenges?
So I think a lot of it has to do with the people you surround yourself with, right? You mentioned your partner, and I think we can all attest to having either partners or friends or family that support you, but it's also the people you surround yourself with at work. And I think I was fortunate that I always had a great team that allowed me to have that flexibility, right? If I had to, if my daughter was sick and I needed to be home, I was able to do that. Or if I needed to leave early, right, to go to a Halloween parade or be at school for some sort of event, I was able to do that. And I think having that flexibility is important for any parent in any job. And we're a little bit lucky now that the world has changed a bit post COVID, and it seems crazy to think we were ever physically in an office 5 days a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now people work from home a lot more, and it's widely accepted and it's successful. So I think it's now probably a lot easier than it was back then, where I did work from home at night a lot. When my daughter would go to bed, I'd pick up my computer and start working, but that wasn't as common as it is these days. So I think I've always said, like, I don't really care when you get your work done as long as you get it done. So if it's not from 9 to 5, I think that's okay. And that's probably more accepted now in the workplace than it used to be. And that makes it easier for all parents, right? It's just you've got to be able to manage your time. And it's hard. It's hard for any parent. Like sometimes work has to take precedent over, something with your kids or your family. And it's just deciding when to make that decision. And it's always, like you said, a juggling act, but I think it's easier this day and age with the ability to work from home. It's a blessing
Mm-hmm.
and a curse, right? Because your phone and your computer is always with you. So,
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. I think, you and I were also talking about this earlier, is that, when you need to prioritize work over your kids, like at least there's kind of this silver lining where you're modeling what it looks like to be a working parent to your children. And I guess I just have that hope for my kids, that they see, that you can have a career and be a parent and actually get that done. So I guess I wanted to ask you, like kind of looking back on how it all went down. Do you ever feel like you missed a part of your young adulthood?
Do I feel like I missed it? Not necessarily. I think there's, like, I always joke there's a trade-off of having kids when you're young versus having kids older. And the
Mm,
trade-off to me was like, okay, I was 21. I had very little money, right? I'm not in my, we'll call it the wealth accumulation phase. I'm early career, just starting out. So I had no money. I wasn't thinking 529 savings right at that point, but I was young and I had the energy and maybe a little bit of naivety, right? Is that the word I'm looking for? Like I was a little bit naive to everything,
hmm
which I think helps too. The sort of like the less you know. So I think that piece of like being a young parent is it's different than like let's say you have kids in your late 30s, which is so common now. You have the money, right? Like that's not an issue. You might be a little more tired, right, than you were
Yeah.
when you were in your early 20s. So I think that's the trade-off. I don't necessarily feel like I missed out on my 20s. I think it was different than a lot of, my high school friends or my college friends, what they were doing in their 20s. But I sort of joke that I'm like living my 20s now, right? I'm in my 40s and now I'm sort of reliving my 20s. So,
Yeah, I love that actually, but because I feel like I I kind of have I'm looking forward to, getting to that stage where my kids are older and I can kind of sleep in and, drink some wine and kind of do what I want to do a little bit more.
yes.
But
It's the different stage. I will say the world prepares you so well for having a baby, right? Like
mm,
I've talked about this with people recently now that I'm what they call an empty nester, where like think about when you're pregnant, there's Lamaze classes, there's books that you read, there's baby showers, there's all of these things to prepare you for being a parent. But then when your kids go off to college and you're sort of in this like, okay, my kids are gone, the house is quiet, what do I do now? There's no real like preparation for that. Like
mm,
it almost seems like there's this gap in society that we need to fill because it is I feel like you need to be prepared for it. It sounds exciting, but it's also kind of sad and
mm.
there's like that missing piece that I don't know that we prepare parents enough for. So,
Yeah, I know I'm definitely going to be one of those moms that's in tears when
yep.
my son leaves. But do you ever talk with Molly about your experiences as a young mom?
Yeah, we talk. I'm pretty much an open book. I think my anybody who listens to this, whether it's clients or colleagues or family, they're going to tell you I have a pretty open book policy. So I try to be as honest as possible, and we talk about it quite a bit. It's funny as like a parent, you always wonder if your kids are listening or if they're grateful, right? Like you don't always get the thank you that you deserve as a parent. It's a hard job. It's a thankless job often.
Yeah. Mm.
And so sometimes you get those little, like when your kids are young, they want to snuggle with you, right? They love you so much. They give you a big hug when you come in the door. And then you get through these like the preteen phase where they start to want their independence. It's not cool to be around mom and dad. And then they become a teenager and you're like, you know nothing and they're way smarter than you are. And, the dynamic changes throughout the stages of raising kids. And sometimes you're not sure, like, am I doing a good job? Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
There's no playbook or right or wrong way to do it. We're all just trying to do the best we can. So I actually was telling you, Diana, that last year my daughter was a senior in high school and she took this, I think the class was called positive psychology. So it's like a subset of a psych course. And
Mm.
she wrote this letter to me that I would love to share a couple pieces of because I feel like I mean, I cry every time I read it, so I'll try really hard not to, but it's something that will go in a frame. And I promise you, as a parent, you will all get these experiences at some point in some form, but I just think this was so
Something to
cool.
look
So,
forward to. Yeah.
right, where you get that kudos that you took me 18 years to get it. No, I'm just kidding. But, so I'll read a little bit of it. I won't read
That'd be
all of it,
great.
but
Yeah.
So it says, Dear Mom, we are writing gratitude letters in class, and I know I don't tell you enough how grateful I am for everything you have done for me. I know I don't always give you enough credit for how hard you work to step up and raise me when you were barely an adult yourself. I am so proud to tell people my mom was a young, strong, single mother who raised me while building a career for herself. And then she says a lot of other stuff. I'll skip that. And then at the end, I know me going to college isn't going to be easy on either of us, but I'm excited to experience such a special place with you. I love you,
Mm.
Mom. Thank you for being my protector, cheerleader, and supporter for the last 18 years. You are my biggest role model, and I am grateful to be your daughter. Love, the best daughter in the entire world. So she got my
Oh.
sense of humor there too.
Oh
So
man,
I I know
that's powerful.
it's going into a frame because it will remind me during the tough times that okay, I must have
You
done
did
something
something
right.
right. Yeah.
I hope so. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
I love that.
that's all we can ask for as parents is you hope your kids look up and see, you're not doing everything perfectly, but you're not meant to do it perfectly. As long as they can learn from you and grow from you and see that you're a strong role model for them, I think that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, job well done, Mary. Great job. Well, I'm afraid we're just about out of time. I wish I could talk to you all day, but I'd like to thank my guest, Mary Saylor, for being on the podcast. Mary, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Diana. It's a pleasure.
If you'd like to reach out to Mary, if you have any questions or comments for her, you can email her at mary.saylor@choreoadvisors.com. And if you have a struggle yourself and you wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at diana.britton@informa.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to The Healthy Advisor. If you've not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there's healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of wealthmanagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your particular situation.